Hello and welcome to the UPSC Mains PYQ series by Shikara Academy. Um, in this live answer writing series, we will be discussing all the UPSC Mains, GS Mains questions asked by UPSC over the past years. So in this fifth live session today, we will be discussing about the 2024 General Studies Paper 1. We will discuss 5 questions in today's session, that is question number 1 to question number 5 of the given question paper. Now, starting with question number 1. Underline the changes in the field of society and economy from the Rig Vedic to the later Vedic period. 10-mark question that we have to answer in 150 words. Now, mapping it with the syllabus, we can see that it has been asked from the subject of Indian heritage and culture. And it covers the salient aspects of art forms, literature, architecture from ancient to modern times. Because we have been asked about the society and economy. So basically, this question is asking us to compare the society as well as the economy from Rig Vedic period and the later Vedic period. So this type of question UPSC does asks a lot, that comparison between the two time periods, and how do you on which parameters do you compare the parameters of society and the economy of that period. Now, the approach in order to answer such question is that we will be following the introduction, body and conclusion approach. In introduction, we describe the timeline for the Rig Vedic and the later Vedic period. And then by writing a connecting line, we will connect it to the body. In the body of the answer, we will be addressing the demand of the question. So we'll address the demand of question. And what is the demand of question? That we have to compare the societal changes and the economic changes between these two periods. Then we summarize the answer in conclusion and link it to the future developments. That is a forward looking or a future looking conclusion, even if the answer is of ancient history or of the history answer. It is better to give a conclusion that is future looking or forward looking. Now, starting the introduction, the transition from Rig Vedic, the period of Rig Vedic, to 1500 to 1000 BCE to later Vedic period, that is 1000 to 600 BCE, marked significant transformations in both society and economy, and laying the foundation of in early Indian civilization. So, in introduction, we have described the time period and we have connected to the body that there are many changes in the society as well as the economy. Now we'll discuss the changes in society, the societal changes both in both the periods. And when the comparative question is asked, when a comparative question is asked, it is always a good practice to make a table and compare the two entities. First, we have Rig Vedic period, then we have the later Vedic period. So first, the social stratification. In Rig Vedic period, the society was relatively egalitarian with fluid Varna class system and a minimal hierarchy. But when evolved to the later Vedic period, the social stratification evolved, the Varna system became rigid and resulting in a well-defined caste hierarchy with Brahmins and Kshatriyas at the top. Okay, so in Rig Vedic period, the society was more or what egalitarian, somewhat egalitarian, and the Varna system or the Varna class system was not that much rigid, but it became rigid in the later Vedic period, and the Kshatriyas and the Brahmins, they occupied the top positions of the society. Then the status of women. So women in the Rig Vedic period, they enjoyed the higher status, participated in religious and educational life, and had family rights. But the status of women declined in the later Vedic period, and with restrictions on education, religious role, and increasing patriarchal role. So patriarchy increased in the society in the later Vedic period, and the status of women declined. Then the religious practices. In the Rig Vedic period, there was simple rituals focused on nature worship and personal yagnas. Okay, so in Rig Vedic period, there was nature worship and personal yagnas, and the rituals were simple. But in the later Vedic period, the rituals became more complex. The simple rituals became complex and more elaborate, and that emphasized the Brahmanical authority and large sacrifices like Ashwamedh. Okay, because even if the social, even In the social stratification, the Brahmanas, they were dominant. They were an authoritative figure that was reflected in the religious practices as well. Then there was governance. Kingship was not absolute in Rigvedic period, and the rulers were not were often elected by the assemblies. So in the Rigvedic period, we had certain sort of democracy in the society. Kingship was not absolute, and the rulers or the kings were elected by the assemblies. In the later Vedic period, there was a rise in hereditary monarchy. Okay, so a king's son will become the king. That sort of hereditary monarchy was there in the later Vedic period, and the king had a stronger centralized power. Now, after discussing the social changes, now let's discuss the economic changes in the Rig Vedic period and the later Vedic period. So, primary occupation in the Rig Vedic period was the economy was pastoral with cattle as the main wealth. In the later Vedic period, agriculture became dominant, aided by iron tools and plows, increasing productivity. So, in the Rig Vedic period, it was the cattle which was the main wealth. In the later Vedic period, it was land, the agricultural land, which became dominant. Then land ownership in the Rig Vedic period, land was communally owned and no private property was there. In the later Vedic period, there was emergence of private land ownership and land grants to Brahmins as well as nobles. Then the trade and practice, there was limited trade in the Rig Vedic period and mostly it was barter system based. In the later Vedic period, there was expansion of trade. There was use of metallic coins called Nishka and the rise of specialized crafts and the market centers. Talking about urbanization, the Rig Vedic society, the Rig Vedic economy was predominantly rural and tribal settlements were there. The later Vedic period, it saw the emergence of towns and early urban centers in the Indian subcontinent. Now, concluding the answer, the later Vedic period witnessed the shift from simple pastoral society to a more complex and stratified agrarian based civilization. So, this is our summarizing line. So, like we have summarized the answer. Then these changes in social hierarchy, the gender roles, and the economic practices and the technology, it set the stage for the rise of early Indian kingdoms as well as the classical Indian culture. So, this is our future development line. Okay, like what these changes did in future. So, in the future, it led to it prepared the stage. It set the stage for the rise of early Indian kingdoms and the classical Indian culture. Moving on to the next question. This was 2024 GS paper 1, question number 2. Estimate the contribution of Pallavas of Kanchi in for the development of art and literature in the South India. It is also a 10-mark question that has to be answered in 150 words. Now, mapping it with the syllabus, it is asked from the subject of Indian history and culture, and that is salient aspects of art forms, literature, and architecture from ancient to modern times. This particular question is asking us about the art as well as literature during and the contribution of Pallavas in development of art and literature. So it is asking about art forms, it is asking about literature during the reign of Pallavas and the contribution of Pallavas. Now, answering this type of question in the introduction body conclusion approach, in introduction, we describe the timeline of the Pallavas of Kanchi because it is a good practice in the ancient history or in the art and culture answers. If you mention the timeline, it gives an idea to the examiner that this particular candidate is very well versed with the subject. Then we connect the introduction to the body, and if the time permits, it is a very good practice that you show the region that you are talking about on a map. Then in body, we write about the contributions to art and contributions to literature. Pallava's contribution to art, Pallava's contribution to literature, because it has been the demand of the question. Then in conclusion, we summarize the answer and link it to the future developments as we have done in the previous answer. Now, starting our introduction, the Pallavas of Kanchi from 4th to 9th century CE played a pivotal role in shaping the culture landscape of the South India. So, this is our introductory line. Their patronage, that is Pallava's patronage, led to significant advancements in both art and literature, leaving a lasting legacy. This is our connecting line. And in the map of India, if you draw the map of India, a quick map of India, and if you just label the region, the Andhra Pradesh region of today's Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, which encompasses the territories of Pallavas, it will be a added advantage to your answer. Then we have to write the body, that is contributions of Pallavas to art. First is temple architecture. The Pallavas pioneered the Dravidian temple architecture. The rock-cut temples of Mahabalipuram and the structural temples like the Kailashnath of Kanchipuram are remarkable examples. And it is always a good practice to substantiate your answers with the examples. So we write about the Dravidian temple architecture and give the examples of the temples of Mahabalipuram and at the Kailashnath temple at Kanchipuram. Then this sculpture, their contribution first it was temple architecture, then the sculptures that are in these temples. So exquisite stone carvings and bas reliefs such as the descent of the Ganges at the Mahabalipuram showcase their artistic excellence. Okay, so this is another example, the descent of the Ganges that is in Mahabalipuram. Third, we have the paintings, their contribution in the paintings. There are traces of mural paintings from the Pallava period have found in temples reflecting their contribution to visual arts. Now talking about their contributions to literature. So Sanskrit as well as Tamil literature. The Pallava court was center for scholars and poets. Sanskrit works flourished under their rule and Tamil literature received royal patronage. Okay. So even though their court language was Tamil, the Tamil literature received royal patronage, but the Sanskrit work they also flourished during their rule, unlike the present times. Then the famous scholars, the reign of Mahendravarman and Narsingvarman I saw the eminent scholars like the Dandin and Bharati. Okay, so the name of scholars is also important. Now, in conclusion, we write the Pallavas of Kanchi were instrumental in the evolution of South Indian art and literature. Their innovations in temple architecture support literary activities, laid the foundation for future cultural developments in the region. So, this is our concluding line or the summarizing line. And the second part of the conclusion is our forward or future looking line. Then moving on to the third question, that is, what were the events that led to the Quit India movement? Point out its results. Okay, a 10-mark question should be answered in 150 words. Mapping it with the syllabus, it has been asked from the subject of modern history, the freedom struggle, its various stages, important contributors, contributions from different parts of the country. And this is talking about Quit India movement, the stage of the Quit India movement. Now, your approach for this answer should be, in introduction, we have to describe the Quit India movement because the question is asking about the Quit India movement. We have to describe the Quit India movement. Then in body, we have to address the demand, that is the events which led to this movement, the Quit India movement, and the results of the Quit India movement. So the body has two parts, the events as well as the results. Then in conclusion, we write the outcome of the Quit India movement and link it to future developments. Okay. Starting with the introduction, the Quit India movement launched by Mahatma Gandhi on 8 August 1942. Okay, so it was launched by Mahatma Gandhi. It was launched on 8 August 1942. It marked a decisive phase in India's struggle for independence. It called for an immediate end to British rule through mass disobedience, uniting people across the country in the final push for freedom. Now, writing the body, events that led to the Quit India movement. First was the failures of the Cripps mission. So Cripps mission was sent by the British government in 1942. The British government's Cripps mission offered only the limited self-governance, which was rejected by the Indian leaders as inadequate. Okay, so during the Second World War, this Cripps mission was sent by the British government to India. It was around in March 1942, and In in that Cripps mission, there was a proposal of the limited self-governance, but which was rejected by the Indian leaders because they wanted more autonomy. Then was the impact of World War II. India's forced involvement in war led to economic hardship and inflation and Bengal famine, which fueled the widespread discontent. Because the Indian soldiers, they were serving the British army, they were sent to fight the war, this World War II. This was the forced involvement because the Indian leadership was was not very keen to send the Indian soldiers. But anyway, the soldiers were sent, and this led to the war, led to the economic hardship because the British resources were now the British were spending the resources on the war on their war machine. It rise, the inflation rose, and the infamous Bengal famine of the 1940s it further fueled the widespread discontent. Okay, then there was frustration among the nationalists. Continued delays in granting autonomy, as well as the Repressive Defense of India Act, intensified impatience among the Congress leaders and the masses. So the the Congress leaders, the nationalist leaders, as well as the Indian masses, they all of them were becoming impatient. All of them, there was a feeling of widespread discontent. Then there was fear of Japanese invasion. The threat of Japanese advancement during World War II heightened the urgency for the immediate independence. Then finally, it was Mahatma Gandhi's do or die call. With the Bombay Congress session, Gandhi's appeal galvanized the nation to participate in the mass non-cooperation because till this point of time, even Mahatma Gandhi were somewhat dissatisfied or he was also frustrated with the British policies and he wanted the British to be out as soon as possible. That is why he gave the final call of do or die. Then what were the results? The results of this Quit India movement. First was it was able to achieve mass mobilization. The movement witnessed unprecedented participation from all the sections of society, including students, workers, and women. Okay, so all sections of the society they participated. The result was the brutal repression by the British. The British responded with mass arrests, detaining leaders like Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, and suppressing protests with force. So, on the day of the launch, Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, they were uh, all these three leaders of the movement, they were arrested and put into jail. And that further strengthened the nationalism. Despite the repression, the movement united Indians and intensified the demands for independence. Then the political consequences was that the movement exposed the limits of British authority and laid the groundwork for post-war negotiations, okay, which ultimately led to India's independence in 1947. The political consequence was that, the British, the so-called British supremacy, it got exposed that they are not invincibles, the British are not invincibles, and they can be disposed of. So it laid the groundwork for the post-war negotiations. Then there was rise of new leaders because the top leaders like Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, they were arrested on the very first day of the movement. But the local leaders like Aruna Asif Ali, Jayaprakash Narayan, they emerged and the parallel governments were briefly established in some regions, mainly in the region of Satara and Talcher. There was this establishment of the parallel governments. Many of them ran for 1 or 2 years before they were suppressed by the British government. Then, in conclusion, we write that although the Quit India movement did not achieve the immediate independence, okay, the Quit India movement, we were not able to achieve the immediate independence, but it marked a turning point in demonstrating Indian people's resolve and making British rule untenable. The movement's spirit of unity and sacrifice inspired future generation and hastened or it fast forwarded the end of colonial rule in India. Then moving on to next question, question 4. What is sea surface temperature rise? How does it affect the formation of tropical cyclone? 150 10-mark question that has to be answered in 150 words. Now mapping it with the syllabus, it has been asked from the subject of geography. It is important geophysical phenomena and it is talking about cyclone. Seeing the approach, in introduction, we describe the sea surface temperature rise and link it to the body. Then in body, we write about the sea surface temperature rise. So in introduction, we are describing what a sea surface temperature rise is, and then in the connecting body, we link it to the body. In the connecting line, we link it to the body. The sea surface temperature rise, its impact on the tropical cyclone formation. Then in conclusion, we summarize the answer. Now, writing the introduction, the sea surface temperature rise, it refers to the rise in the surface temperature of the ocean's uppermost layer, mainly caused by global warming and greenhouse gas emissions. So, the uppermost layer of, if this is the entire ocean, the uppermost layer, that is the sea surface temperature rise, it refers to the increase in the temperature of the ocean's uppermost layer, that is the topmost layer. This phenomena has profound effect on the global weather patterns, particularly the formation and intensity of the tropical cyclones. And in this line, we have connected, in the second line, we have connected it to the body. This is our connecting line. Sorry. Then we write about the sea surface temperature rise. So SST, that is sea surface temperature rise, represents the water temperature in the uppermost ocean layer, typically measured within 1 millimeter to 20 meters below the surface. So 1 millimeter till 20 meters below the surface of, we measure the sea surface temperature. The key drivers of the sea surface temperature rise are the greenhouse gas emissions, increased greenhouse gas emissions, and they are trapping the heat in the atmosphere. Second is the El Nino events, which is periodic warming of the Pacific Ocean. Third is the melting of ice, which is reducing the sunlight reflection or the albedo. Okay, so albedo is going down. Then we discuss the impact of the sea surface temperature rise on the tropical cyclone formation. First is the enhanced energy source. The tropical cyclones, they derive their energy from the warm ocean waters, and the sea surface temperature above 26.5 degrees Celsius or around 27 degrees Celsius are necessary for the cyclone formation. Second is the increased evaporation. Because of the warmer sea surface temperature, it leads to more evaporation, adding moisture to the atmosphere and fueling the cyclones. So this moisture is adding fuel to the cyclone. Greater intensity and frequency. The cyclones, the tropical cyclones, the higher SSTs results in more intense and frequent cyclones, which rise in the category of severe, category 4 and category 5 storms. Then there is expanded cyclone zones. Cyclone may form in regions previously too cool, increasing risks for the new areas. So cyclones may form in the regions like previous regions, like the upper altitudes. They were the temperature was not that warm there. The surface temperature, the ocean surface temperature was not very much warm there, but due to the increased temperature, increased sea surface temperature rise, even those regions which are the subtropical regions or the temperate regions, they are getting warmed up enough for the cyclones to develop. Then there is conclusion. In conclusion, we write the increasing sea surface temperature directly correlate with enhanced tropical cyclone formation potential, as warmer oceans provide the essential energy source for these powerful weather systems, in making cyclone activity more frequent and intense. So, with this line, we have summarized or concluded our answer. Now, its significance is that this trend poses significant challenges for the coastal communities and global climate stability. Okay. Moving on to the last question, that is question number 5. Why do large cities tend to attract more migrants than smaller towns? Discuss in the light of conditions in developing countries. 10-mark question that has to be answered in 150 words. Mapping it with the syllabus, it has been asked from the subject of society and the topic is urbanization. And the question is asking why the large cities, the large metro cities, they tend to attract more migrants. So that why migrants, they are moving to these large cities as compared to the small cities or small towns. And we have to discuss in light of the condition in the developing countries. Okay. Talking about the approach, we'll write in introduction, we write an introductory line and then a connecting line. And in body, we write the reasons for the migration in the large cities. And then in conclusion, we summarize the answer. So we write with the introductory line. In introductory line, we write that the large cities in developing countries. Please note that it is not, the question is not limiting us to India only. Okay. The question is asking about large cities in developing countries, this phenomena of urbanization in the developing countries. So it offers opportunities and amenities than smaller towns often lack the amenities for like opportunities, the economic opportunities, the social amenities which the small towns lack and are present in the large cities or the metro cities. This urban migration is driven by the promise of better livelihoods, improved services, and aspiration for a modern lifestyle. So this is our connecting line by which we will connect the introduction and the body. This is writing. The urban migration is driven by promises of better livelihood, improved services, and aspiration for a modern society. And then we talk about economic opportunities. So large cities, they serve as economic hubs, providing diverse job options in industries, in services, and informal sector. So cities, they have a large economy as compared to the small towns or the cities, they have a large economy as compared to the smaller towns. And there are industry, there are opportunities of employment in industries, in services, and also in the informal sector. Then there is urban wages are significantly higher than the rural areas or the smaller towns, making the cities financially attractive. Example we can give of our own country. Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore in India offers jobs in IT, finance, in manufacturing. And we can also talk about Dhaka because it is not asking only about the Indian cities, it is asking about cities of the developing nations. So we can give an example of Dhaka, which offers job in the textile industry. Then second is the access to services and infrastructure. There is superior healthcare, superior education, and public transport are concentrated in large cities. The cities host top education institutions and hospitals, providing improving prospects of migrants and their families. So, superior healthcare, superior education, good means of transport. So, all these services and infrastructure, they also attract the migrants. Then there is social and cultural factors. Establishment Established migrant communities in cities help newcomers settle and find jobs. Urban centers offer a cosmopolitan lifestyle, entertainment, and cultural diversity, appealing especially to the youth. So, the large migrant communities, okay, in cities, they help. So, if there is a large migrant population in a city, that large migrant population will help the newcomers. So, newcomers and new migrants which are coming from their own community. So, the large migrant communities then help the newcomer migrant to settle and find jobs in the city. Okay. Finally, is the political and institutional support. Government policies and investments often prioritize large cities, further boosting their economic activity and infrastructure. Okay, because the large cities are the engines of growth in the country. So, government as well as the institutions, they have the government and the administration, they provide resources, they provide support, they provide investments, and they prioritize the large cities that further boost their economic activity and infrastructure. Now, writing the conclusion. In developing countries, large cities act as the engines of growth. Okay, so this engines of growth is the keyword, and opportunity drawing migrants from smaller towns and rural areas. The combination of better jobs, higher wages, and advanced infrastructure and vibrant social life makes them preferred destination for those seeking upward mobility, improving standards despite challenges like congestion and high living costs. So here we have highlighted the challenges of congestion and high living cost, but we have also highlighted that the combination of factors such as the better jobs, higher wages, advanced infrastructure, better social life, better services that acts as the magnet for these migrant communities to come to the large cities. So the PDF of this model answers will be available to you on Shikara Academy's Telegram channel as well as WhatsApp channel. Thank you.
Hello and welcome hardworking aspirants. In today's class, we are going to discuss about the advent of Europeans in India, and we are going to talk about English and French. If you have already attended the first class, you must have seen that we have already discussed about the Portuguese, We have discussed about the Dutch and also about the Danes. And there was a question that I asked you in the last class, if you remember, that who were those Europeans who came to India for the first time, and also who were the last one who went out of India. And I'll just confirm that whether I have gone live or not. But you just tell me whether you know the answer to this question or not. Who were the first Europeans who came to India, and who were the last ones to go out of India? Yes, that's the question that I am asking from you. And let me see, have I gone live or not? Okay,